Hi there. Welcome to another episode of Into the Fog, episode 2, a weekly conversational Dead by Daylight podcast featuring myself, RunningMan, full-time Twitch streamer, full-time killer main on Twitch, with my lovely co-host, DanInaHurry. Introduce yourself, Dan.
Dan, back at it again with another good-ass podcast with Dowsey as well.
Yo, Dowsey, you want to introduce yourself real quick? Because Dan didn't even tell. Literally, Dan just decided not to tell us he's a Survivor main, not to tell us he's a full-time content creator, not to tell us that he is the excellence of execution at the shack. But anyways, Dowsey, would you like to talk about yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me here. My name is Dowsey. I'm an educational Dead by Daylight killer main, play a decent amount of Survivor. Dan never believed that I played Survivor when we first played Swift together, and then he was like, oh my god, Dowsey actually plays Survivor as well. Who would have thought?
Dude, that's kind of weird, champ. I mean, maybe he didn't ever watch the stream, because I've been following Dowsey. I've been following Dowsey for a long time, and I've seen both your killer and your Survivor gameplay. And well before I ever came out of my shell and became a world famous, millions of dedicated fans podcaster, I knew that I was going to want to have Dowsey on an episode, because this man has got a galaxy brain to challenge the Milky Way. Right? That's good. That's good, right?
That's good. That's good. I'll put that on business card, and I'll make sure to put your signature underneath it.
No credit. I won't accept. Sorry. So, as you guys know, if you've been listening to the show, this podcast, we sit down, myself and Dan, and we host a guest. We talk about what's going on in our favorite game, Dead by Daylight. We have a unique perspective, being that I am a heavily killer favored player. Dan's a Survivor player. Dowsey actually is. I feel like you're primarily a killer player, right? Like you're a killer main, but you play both sides, kind of like myself.
Yeah, like if someone had to add up the hours I've put into either role, then killer's definitely on top. But I definitely play like a lot of Survivor. Anytime that I'm not making content for Dead by Daylight, but I'm playing Dead by Daylight, that's all Survivor. So it's kind of like the hidden secret power of my DBD game is the Survivor side of it.
The funny thing is how, like, basically we're the same player, only you're good at the game. Like, I do the same thing. Like, I play killer primarily on stream, but like off stream, I mostly play Survivor. Every once in a while, I'll take the breaks to play Survivor on stream, just to kind of catch a break when the tilt starts to rise. We talked about this before the show. Sorry, when the tilt starts to rise, sometimes it's nice to just play Survivor, and but we'll get into some stuff like that later on. We'll talk more. So basically, the rundown for the episode today. We're going to talk about the new MMR system that was announced this week by Behavior, which is going to be focusing on taking rank out of the spotlight and using a hidden matchmaker rating to try to make more balanced games, more fair games. And again, we'll have a lot to talk about here. We're going to discuss the concept of DBD as an esport. This is a conversation piece that tends to be very divisive. You've got your strict, it'll never work. You've got your strict, it's going to totally work. And then you got your people that are kind of in between, like, well, I can see it working, but it needs to be this, that, and the other needs to happen. We'll talk about that, which we're very fortunate to have Dowsey on the episode this week, as he is he's a shoutcaster by trade. He is very, very high IQ esports person, which is nice to have, as Dan and I have a collective experience in esports of potato. Right, Dan?
I've played a game or two, but yeah, pretty much.
You played a game or two? I mean, I know. I mean, I guess technically you can count the Running Dan Grand Slam as an esport. What place did you get in that, Dan?
Top 5.
Top 5?
Yes. Congrats, Dan. That's,
Top 5,
that's pretty good.
That's beautiful. Oh wow, yeah. I'm sure you can put that on your resume immediately. All right, and then the last thing I wanted to discuss today, like for a specific topic, is the topic of VPNs in DBD and what they mean to the quality of the dedicated servers, the quality of the match in a dedicated server environment. Sorry, that was a really bad sentence. I am not a professional talker, except that I sort of am a professional talker, so maybe I should walk that one back. But no, so basically the VPNs, what their effect is on matches in general. Dan, I feel like, is going to have a lot of things to say on this topic. Dan, would you like to just, on a scale of 1 to 69, how upsetty spaghetti do you get over VPNs in Dead by Daylight?
Honestly, I get very upset about it, and I feel like people are doing it more and more, and it's kind of weird to me. Like, I first started noticing it, like, just a little bit at first, but as of late, I don't know why. It's been appearing. Maybe I don't know. It's because I'm aware of it, but every time it ends up being like a really like laggy or delay match, I'll check their profile, and it'll either be private or like it'll be like from across seas.
Okay, yeah. So we'll get into that subject soon, but yeah, I would tend to agree with what you're saying. And then of course we'll have Dowsey. Now, if you guys aren't aware, Dowsey is an Australian who hails from the UK. So he's got a completely different like player based demographic style. Like he plays in a whole. He's here. It's like we're recording this in the evening for us, and it's like the literal middle of the night for Dowsey right now. So hats off to this man for being willing to sacrifice sleep to educate a couple of young plebeians. But I don't think the VPN issue is as pronounced in his region, but we'll still be very interested to hear his take on the whole situation. So okay, so for starters, the new MMR system. I've got the status update, like the forum post pulled up here. We can talk a little bit about the new MMR system. Dowsey, would you like to take point on this real quick?
Yeah, so basically behavior have 3 concerns when it comes to matchmaking: how long it takes to find a game, how fair that game is as far as your opponent's skill, your teammates' skill levels, and then your actual ping to the server. And that's like almost a triangle is the way they put it out, and they need to find a sweet spot for all 3 of those issues. And they feel that currently the good old rank 1 pip system that we have in the game just doesn't quite cut it. I know last week Alex basically said that instead of a white to red system, we need a white all the way through the rainbow system to make Dead by Daylight matchmaking work. Well, that's essentially what behavior are implementing with a hidden matchmaking rating. So that will be a number assigned to each player. We don't know how that number is going to be generated yet. That's kind of the concerning facet, I think, for most people. But the idea is that number will go up and down depending on how well or how poorly you perform, and then you'll be matched with people of a very similar number to you to make sure that your matches are always about as equal skill leveled as possible.
Okay, so just right out of the gate, Dan, what do you think your number is going to be?
Honestly, I feel like it's definitely going to be in the top 1%. Probably like, I don't know, 69, dude. Probably around there.
So the top 1% of the player base.
Pretty much.
I mean, I was thinking the same thing, about myself, but I mean, Dowsey, if you guys have seen him play, like I feel like he'll probably be somewhere in the 50th percentile, somewhere in the middle. He's pretty
50 percentile.
You're pretty decent guy. No, all joking aside, guys, if you don't know, go ahead. You got something? Sorry.
My role in Discord is bad at Dead by Daylight. So
yeah, see, but that's the thing.
Actually, be the lower 50th percentile.
I feel like self-deprecation is a lot like. Well, I never mind. I almost made a really uncool joke. Self-deprecation is big in Dead by Daylight and big in like content, Twitch and otherwise. But Dowsey is being very humble. I honestly see Dowsey as like a top 3% kind of player. And like I said, he's an educational. When you market yourself as an educational player, you've got a lot of confidence in your ability to play the game. And this man like delivers on that. And I've learned a lot from watching him. What I will say is that Dowsey, as an educational content creator, is somebody that has helped me because like I feel like your content is angled to help somebody who may or may not be like an elite player. Like you kind of cover all your bases in terms of like the stuff that's covered. I kind of feel like I got off on a tangent here, and mostly it was just to fluff Dowsey up real quick. But I will say that like while being very like consumable for somebody that's like a mid-tier to upper mid-tier player, he's definitely amongst the top percentile of at least killer players that I've seen. So I see myself honestly joking, like all joking aside, more of like the true talent, like rank 6 to rank 8. Like if the ranking system actually was indicative of skill, I'd see myself somewhere in like the rank 6, rank 8 area. So yeah, I don't know. Do we want to like, what do we think? Dan would be, I would love to hear your take on this. Like, what do you actually think about an MMR system relative to the system we have now in terms of matchmaking?
I feel like it's gonna be amazing. I feel like it's gonna be a good change. You have a lot of survivors that want to meme. They want to not really do gens, or they want to use, they want to use plunders. They want to use ace in the hole. There's so many things they want to do other than actually play the game. And I think that MMR is going to reflect that, and it's going to be really good for how fast they get games and where they are as a whole. And say killers, right? Say they're the same ranking as them. They just want to like dumpster them. They want to 4K them. Those guys are just going to rise up fast. I feel like if it works the way I think it's gonna work, all the killers that want to win in 4K versus all the survivors that actually want to complete gens should ultimately be together and be competitive with each other. And the people that don't want to play the game as seriously shouldn't be, and it's gonna be really interesting.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like your perfect world scenario.
Yeah.
And I think that really it's going to come down to what they actually like consider when it comes to the MMR score. And that is what I've heard a lot of like pushback on being a problem, is that like the intangible things in Dead by Daylight are really what set aside a good player from a great player from an amazing player. And it's like the rank system tries to perfectly encapsulate what a good game is, but I mean, I can speak from personal experience that it can be very frustrating to feel like you played a really good game and end up entity displeased or brutal killer, and then play a game where you feel like you maybe were at 40 or 50% and you end up pipping in the game, or even two pipping in the game. Like, I don't know, just there are frustrations and there are inconsistencies of the current rank system. I'm hoping that the MMR system alleviates some of those problems. My thing is, and I'm looking forward again to hearing what Dowsey has to say on the subject, because again, you play in like a tier of the game that I don't think I exist in. But in my tier of the game, what my hope for is that this system is very broad and kind of puts everybody closer together than farther apart, if that makes sense. Like, I was all in favor of them just doing away with ranks. Just opening matchmaking, get us games as quickly as possible. It's not a serious competitive game to me. And so get us lobbies as fast as possible. And if people are really concerned that their teammates aren't going to be up to snuff, that's why they have the survival friends as an option. If you're worried your teammates are not going to be good, start making some friends. But yeah, so my biggest concern comes down to how is the MMR going to rate a performance, and are we going to end up in the same problem we have now, where the bulk of people's MMRs are going to fall somewhere in the green purple range, and people that play the game at what the game thinks is a high MMR level are going to end up being so scarce that we're going to have matchmaking issues. You'll get punished for playing too well. If you play too good, then all of a sudden your matchmaker is going to have a hard time finding people for you to play. Dowsey, would you like to give us your unique take on this scenario?
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about there is kind of the Apex Legends problem of hidden matchmaking rating, which is that in Apex Legends, the entire lobby, or 64 players in the lobby, are there based on their matchmaking rating. And it's not a case of mixing a lobby with some good players, some bad players. It's all similar matchmaking rating, which means every game is really competitive when you're lower to mid to even good ranks. But once you start hitting that that top percentile of playership, pretty much every game becomes the world championship of of Apex Legends, right? Which people don't necessarily want to do when they're playing for fun. And so it can be a really tricky one, because I think you talked about this actually, Running Man, Doug, previously on the podcast, that games like Fortnite and Apex Legends are so much more fun when you have a fighting chance to actually make it into the final circles of the game and feel like you have a chance to win it. And that matchmaking ratings are really good for the majority of the player base. And I think for Dead by Daylight, this is an excellent move, because it will make it so that anyone who's trying to get into the game, or anyone who just enjoys playing on a Friday night with friends, is going to potentially be matched with killers or survivors that match that play style. It does become a bit of a concern for people like myself who stream Dead by Daylight for a good 20 plus hours a week, playing at a pretty high level. What does that mean for my day to day playing the game, and for the others who take this game seriously as well? What does it mean for theirs? the intangible metrics that will define a win, which is something that I feel like behavior have never wanted to define, is what is a win for survivor? What is a win for killer? That is something that I feel like they actually have to literally define to make a matchmaking system work. Um, and will they actually define that publicly, or will that be a hidden criteria to try and prevent meta forming? I don't know. It's quite interesting because it will essentially mean a shift in the way Dead by Daylight is played, I feel.
Yeah, it's crazy. I feel like I reached out to you directly when the announcement was made, and that was exactly what you told me. You were like, this is going to be great for the game, really bad for me because it's gonna make the game even more competitive and even more crazy. Because again, of where you sit in your dedication to the craft of the game. Now, I wonder if that, you and I are different players completely, right? We probably play pretty similar amount a week. Like, I feel like if I play at like I've kind of put the game a little lackadaisical. I don't usually slug. I don't usually make a big to do about trying to get a 4K. I don't play super competitive. So, but if I just play a lot, am I going to end up, just by virtue of how many games I play, am I going to end up in that like very, very competitive tier of the game when it comes to the MMR? Like, I guess we probably don't really know without knowing like how the MMR is calculated. Or do we? Do you have anything on that? Like, can you?
I don't know. Like, I'm looking at our Steam real quickly, and I think you have like 10 plus hours on me for this week, or maybe 5 plus hours. So yeah, we played pretty much the exact same amount over a 2-week period as
Right.
each other.
And you stay in the upper red ranks, and I stay somewhere in the lower red ranks to upper purple ranks, like pretty much consistently. So I wonder how that's going to affect my matchmaking as I play. Yeah. Like, am I going to end up, just by virtue of playing so many games, am I going to end up out of my like where I belong skill wise because of the amount of time I play? Like,
I mean, there's no way for me to answer in a way that is explicitly correct. But if we're gonna basically create hypotheticals and go for educated guesses on this, the new matchmaking system is going to use a queuing system called batch matchmaking. So currently, the way matchmaking works in Dead by Daylight is you essentially join a queue, and your queue says, "I'm looking for like a rank 1 killer," right? As a survivor, and then the game can't find you a rank 1 killer, so it starts expanding it to like rank 2, then rank 3, then rank 4, then rank 5, all the way down to rank 8. If you're like a rank 1 survivor, for example, and it expands that criteria of rank, and then it goes, "Oh, I can't find you a rank, so I'm gonna check another server which is close to you to see if there's anyone in there," and then eventually it'll find someone that meets that criteria. Whereas batch making basically chucks 100 people into a pool and goes, quickly sort them into lobbies that make sense, using an algorithm of matchmaking. So it should essentially make matchmaking quicker, and make the games overall more fair, but there will be maybe one game that has a high rank versus low ranks, or high ranks versus medium ranks, whatever it might be, as far as matchmaking is concerned. And then in those games where you do have that disparity between maybe survivors and killers as far as matchmaking is concerned, then if the person who has the lower rating loses, they won't lose as much rating. Whereas if the person who had the higher rating loses, then they will lose a lot of rating, and the others will gain a lot of rating. So the game is constantly trying to evaluate whether or not you should actually just lose this game. And if you should lose this game, then you don't really get punished as far as matchmaking rating is concerned. You still lose pips because they're going to keep the rank 20 to rank 1 system is almost a trophy system, but your hidden MMR number is constantly going to be fluctuating, and it should be trying to adjust for how difficult the match should be for you. So if you win a difficult match, then you should get more points towards your matchmaking rating. If you lose a difficult match, then you don't really lose anything there.
Right. Yeah. No. So I mean, yeah. It sounds
in theory, you shouldn't be punished for just playing a lot. But if you're constantly doing well and improving and meeting that matchmaking rating system, then maybe you continue climbing into harder matches.
So just basically you tell me to play bad, and then I won't have to worry as much. Okay.
Well, I mean, if you play well and then play versus better players and then start losing, then you're just gonna you're going to go up and down essentially.
Right.
Like you just have to look at your casual League of Legends player who gets stuck in gold. You know, they can play 2 years, 3
But
years.
he's an ELO hell though. That's not the same. It's his teammates. It's not him.
That's,
that's
crazy.
yeah.
They're stuck in there that long. It's insane to think about.
But that's what's going to happen. And you know, the
That
good
was
thing
sarcasm.
about hidden matchmaking is that we won't. I assume it's going to be hidden. Is that we won't ever have that like issue of I'm stuck in Dead by Daylight ELO hell.
Right.
But like people will eventually plateau at a rating where they don't really go up or down much unless they really put significant improvement into the game.
Well, my hope is that, and I will pivot into this, and I would like to hear Dan's take on after this part. But my hope is that with the new matchmaker rating, the pip system, the rank system becomes a lot more lax, and maybe even there's not DPips anymore. Maybe even just like make it everybody starts at 20 and just climbs to 1, like you said, as a trophy system, as a way to show like, hey, I played a bunch. Just because like I don't know, I feel like a lot of people wouldn't feel as bad about a 2K or a 3K as a killer if it didn't tell them that the entity was disappointed in them after they were done.
Right.
You know, because that just feels bad, dude. It's like, dude, I feel like I played pretty decent. I put in a lot of effort. I had fun, but I let down the entity, man. Like I feel bad. Like, but if that didn't happen, I feel like a 2K or a 3K, especially like you could have a match where you killed 2 people. You could have, okay, you're a killer. Let's say you're like, your true MMR puts you somewhere like around rank 12. And the matchmaker, for whatever reason, throws you like 3 rank 1s and a rank 7. And you play a really strong game against those guys, right? And like 2 and 2 get out or whatever. Or even if all 4 get out, like you're not gonna lose. I lost, but what I'm getting at is like you could have a situation where you played really well and like you ranked up with the MMR system. Like, damn, dude, this guy came in there against some like top end opponents. He got 2 kills. He got 3 kills. Hell yeah, dude. He just gained a ton of MMR, but you depipped though. Like you didn't get all your emblems done right, so you depipped because you can depip pretty easily with 3 kills, right? Like if you don't play a certain way. Or if you don't,
I mean, the thing about the emblem status is it really just comes down to the killer you're playing. You might play an excellent plague game and get brutal killer or entity displeased because she doesn't get emblem status, but then you'll play Legion, do the exact same thing and get a merciless killer because
exactly
it fits the emblem system.
Exactly. I think that was like I'm really bad sometimes. I get like super excited and I say too much quickly. But that's what I was getting at. You could play really well against 4 players that are well out of your MMR range, get 2 kills. Your MMR climbs you up like an entire, like a big chunk of like, wow, you did really good. We're going to give you a tougher game. Next game you did so well. You also lost one of your rank points, though, is the thing, because you didn't play. So what I'm hoping for, genuinely and sincerely hoping for, is that they loosen up. Since ranks really finally won't actually matter, they'll loosen up a little bit on that, just because the psychological effect of entity displeased might create more desperation to play the game in a certain way or to like feel like you did bad when you actually did pretty good. Dan, would you like to weigh in at all on any of this topic? Like you've kind of just been hanging out over there.
I want the entity to say "nice try, bud" every time. Actually, nice try, bud.
Nice try, bud.
Actually. So they're not gonna have ranks anymore. They're gonna have MMR, right? They're like, there's gonna be like nothing in the corner of my screen. Like,
no, there will be rank. They said there will be rank, but it will be more an indicator of how much you've played. It will have absolutely no bearing on your matchmatching or like your true skill level.
You think they're gonna change pips, or do you think they'll leave it pips and then it'll just be like not a number, maybe a number? What do you?
That's kind of what I'm talking about. Like, what do you think? Like, I think that personally, I think it would be healthier if they made ranking up easier if it doesn't ultimately matter.
I think so. I mean, that would make sense, right? Like, I feel like that would make sense. I feel like if they could just be a little more, lenient on the whole, you pipped, you didn't pip thing, people wouldn't feel the need to try as hard. And do you think them hiding MMR is a way to say, hey, we think this game is competitive, but we don't want you to see your rank. We don't want you to be able to say, hey, I'm rank 1 or hey, I'm this or that. But they still kind of care because they made it hidden. Like, it's weird.
I think that like do you want to take this down?
One thing that I thought that was interesting because I was watching you earlier, Doug, playing with some dudes on Dead by Daylight, and Dan was also in the chat. And Dan brought up this subject of how the emblem system almost encourages bad killer behavior. if you want to keep that rank 1, then you better slug, buddy.
100%. Yeah, 100%. So
So
basically, like,
behavior have the opportunity here to essentially remove that pressure, that visual pressure, because that's the blessing of hidden MMR, is that there is no visual pressure, no rank anxiety that goes with playing the game, and it is to encourage people to play for fun rather than to
right.
play to improve a number.
And I know you're out there in the esports world. And you've actually mentioned Fortnite and you've mentioned Apex to this point. And those are perfect examples of games where your MMR is hidden and you go into the match and you have, like, for instance, Fortnite's the one that I have the more experience with because I have children and we play together. And you've got your battle pass, you've got your battle pass level, your level on the game, right? That's a visual indicator. You could literally lose every single game, and if you play enough, that number's going to keep getting higher. You're going to keep unlocking new cosmetics and stuff. But you have a hidden matchmaker rating, you have a hidden rating. But like you said, the ladder anxiety, the stress, the pressure, like, kind of comes off. An individual match in that game is just an individual match in that game. You're just going to go play, and maybe I'll win, maybe I'll lose. Either way, I do think that it would be very wise for behavior to start treating Dead by Daylight similar, in that your matchmaker rating is what's important. So make that hidden, make that how they matchmake you, how they decide who you're going to play, but please make the rank not as punishing. Like, don't make people need to play the way they need to play in order to pip in, like, the red ranks, right? Like, just make it a counter, make it something that you build up over time. Don't, at the minimum, like, I would say, just if they can't lose rank. If they just made it so you can't lose rank, that would be, like, a really good step in the right direction. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. I think maybe cap it so, like, you can drop down. If you, like, hit rank 5, then you can't drop down to rank 6, but you can lose pips all the way down to 5 with 0 pips, right? And then maybe you keep the whole silly rank 1 no pip thing, and you can go all the way down to 2 with no pips. But, like, I don't know. I think that there needs to be a way to fail in games. I think that there has to be to encourage people to not want to fail, but there's a fine line between having a failure point in a game where people are motivated to improve and giving people anxiety and making them feel bad about not meeting their criteria. And this is the exciting part, maybe for some, for behavior, that they can really rework that entire image if they wish to. And I hope that they do.
Nice. I think that's a really good way to roll into our next topic, which is, now that we're talking about MMRs, we're talking about more competitive gaming. DBD as an esport submitted without comment. Dowsey, DBD as an eport. An e-port, a Newport, a cigarette. Like, I cannot. Okay, I know it's like 4 in the morning for you, 5 in the morning for you, but, like, 9 o'clock at night's pretty late for me, man. I get up early, so cut me a break here. All right, talk to me about DBD as an esport.
Right. So I guess for those who don't know my background, I'm a esports shoutcaster. With experience in League of Legends, CS:GO, PUBG, mobile MOBA called Vainglory. A handful of other esport titles, and an avid consumer of esports as well. And when I got into Dead by Daylight, it wasn't because of any competitive reasons. It was because someone wanted to play the game with me, and I fell in love with the game. And very quickly through streaming, I was introduced to the sweaty world of European try-hard players that play competitively. And also met a lot of my friends who mostly are NA content creators who kind of think the idea of competitive Dead by Daylight is it doesn't work. And I think there's a lot of reasons that I can, agree with them on that. But since playing Dead by Daylight, I've partaken in a handful of Dead by Daylight competitions, and I have to say it's probably the most fun I've had playing the game because it allows me to actually take the game seriously at a level. Like when me and you, Running Man, are streaming Killer, for example, for 8 hours a day. There's only a certain amount of level you can take the game seriously. And I know for me, it may look like I'm taking the game really seriously when I play the game. But if I was to stream some of the scrims I play in these competitive levels, like it's a whole different kettle of fish here for DBD competitive.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I can imagine. I can't even honestly. I
so
can't even imagine. That's the thing. Like, and again, I get to be a little bit as my role as a host of a podcast who brings on guests. I get to be a little bit flattering. But Jesus, dude, like, if that's you not paying attention and not really caring that much, I'd be like very interested to watch what a scrim looked like. And I think that's one of the things that like makes people excited about DBD esports is like you look at some of these guys, and I'm not going to name names because then I'll leave somebody out. But you look at some of the top people in DBD on Twitch and you think about how good they play and how impressive they are, and then you think about the fact that they're also streaming and managing a chat, and there are literally no stakes. They're just playing the game. So like imagine if some of those guys who are like top players were really applying themselves. People get excited about that. They're passionate about the game and they want to see it played at that level. And so I want to say about DBD esports, and only because like I don't want to talk too much in this subject, and I'm really interested to hear what you have to say. But my take on DBD as an esport has always been it could work on a bigger scale, but for it to work on a bigger scale, the developers would have to get invested in it and directly involved in it and actually create a tournament mode that limited a lot of things within the game. And again, I'll defer to your intelligence and defer to your experience on this. But my thought process was like a very limited amount of maps, a very limited amount of available perks, maybe even like a perk like auction system where like so many perks could be used. It would require a small team of people to balance specifically for competitive, and there would be a specific competitive mode. Do you agree or disagree with that? Either which way, I want to hear you talk more about your vision or your thoughts about competitive DVD.
yeah, so I played like in 4 different styles of tournaments in Dead by Daylight, which all have a unique rule set of what is and isn't allowed. And the one that I've kind of fallen in love with is a points-based system where a killer for the team is rewarded for points for every hook they get individually, as well as killing a survivor. Um, and the survivors are rewarded for every generator they complete, as well as escaping the trial. Um, and that point-based system there allows the killer of the team, as well as the survivors of the team, to generate a decent amount of individual points, which then allows you to have a clear winner after maybe a best of 2 series. Alex, your previous guest, he has a proposal up on his Twitter, which is more of a best of 5 series, and you play essentially 2 maps each, and then the fifth, if necessary, is a decider. Um, there's always been the question of, do you restrict killers? Do you restrict certain perks? Do you restrict certain play styles? An Italian tournament I played in recently was very restrictive on play styles. The killer couldn't camp, the killer couldn't tunnel. The survivors couldn't rush hooks. They couldn't like hook bomb. They had to and if they did, then the killer could tunnel because the survivor essentially allowed the killer to do so, and it just became very complex and almost
It
unnecessary.
sounds like a nightmare. Like
Yeah,
to officiate or spectate. Ugh.
yeah. So the ones I've enjoyed are the ones that are very freeing, and they say we won't limit your play style. If you want to face camp, if you want to proxy camp a survivor, that's your prerogative. And that is typically how a killer is going to get control versus a very coordinated 4-man Swift. Some of these guys that play Survivor competitively literally have names for everything on the map. And they play with stretch resolution so that they can see everything on the map from their third
Wild,
person
dude.
view and stuff. Like they take it very seriously. So you do need, as a killer, to apply ridiculous amounts of pressure if you're going to take down this coordination level of survivor play.
I mean, I
So
understand.
yeah,
I understand that kind of dedication to the game because, like, I one time changed my perks because of the items that were in the pregame lobby. So
right.
I too, am an intellectual. You know,
Franklin's demise. Let's go.
yeah. Yeah, if you want to go on,
I mean, I think I agree with you that I don't see DBD being an esport. In the traditional sense of League of Legends and CSGO on a stage in a stadium, I don't see DBD being that ever, really. DBD is more comparable to Smash Brothers in the way that the community runs the tournaments. It's grassroots. And there's definitely things that behavior could do that would make the entire system better. One thing that you mentioned, I think, was cutting down on some of the RNG elements. So maybe you would create map seeds, and then you could essentially repeat the exact same layout of a Wrecker's Yard if you wanted to for 2 games in a row, and that would allow the teams to have an absolute fair playing field, so that the exact same pallets will spawn in the exact same places, and that would obviously reduce some of the RNG elements if you wanted to. But I guess the real thing is that I do think Dead by Daylight is an inherently competitive game when you want it to be. You can write rule sets and tournaments that make it competitive, and as far as that is concerned, that makes it an esport. But is it the kind of thing that we're going to be flying to South Korea to watch a world championship in a stadium? Probably not. And from my experience in watching behavior interact with that kind of element of the game, is that's not their vision either, and they're not really looking to support that either.
I feel like that's the same way, and this is kind of like the canned answer I give on stream about it is like, I don't see, not that I don't think that they're capable if they wanted to. If they were passionate about esports, I think that they would make it work. They would make it happen. But nothing in this game's run thus far tells me that they're interested in it being on that kind of a scale. And like I said, for it to really be fair and competitive would require a tremendous amount of time and energy and resources. And we've seen other games in other competitive esports that had a lot of financial backing, AAA financial backing, who have pulled out of esports because they just didn't want to spend the time, money, and resources. Like
it's a ridiculous investment.
It is, yeah. And you ask yourself what kind of a return on that investment would they get outside of like making the game fun, making the game easily consumable for a massive amount of people, and letting people, like you said, grassroots manage the esports side of the game. And so yeah, like I'm with you 100%. Like I don't see a reality where the developers really invest in esports. So esports in DBD is going to be a for the people by the people kind of thing, which isn't inherently a bad thing. Like you said,
I really like it. I like the grassroots element of it, and I shoutcasted a DBD tournament on Friday, Doug, which was ran by a roughly 17-year-old kid from the UK who just wanted to put on a weekend tournament, and he got 8 teams to show up. And it ran really smoothly. The rule set was good, the tournament was good, there was a clear winner at the end of it, and I was like, this is fun. This is what I love as someone who is involved in esports. I love doing this kind of thing. So like I kind of get a little bit upset when I see people who are like DBD competitive, yuck, you know what I mean? Like this is the Mario Party of asymmetric horror games. Clearly it's meant to be a casual game. Like the behavior want to have moments where no one scares your teammates, and these slightly stronger perks create these oh fuck moments. Sorry if I can't swear, but those moments
where, you're off the podcast.
Yeah, off the podcast.
Question mark.
Demonetized.
Like that's what behavior they focus on, is creating these epic moments, almost like Tombstone Myers, for example, is like the oh crap, Tombstone Myers, run, don't get caught kind of thing as a survivor. They're not interested in balance and making sure that Tombstone Myers is a balanced add-on.
Yeah, right. No,
they're interested in creating those crazy stories that you're going to tell your friends, after a game.
For sure. I love the comparison you made for Super Smash Bros. I think that's actually like, again, that's a very apt comparison when it comes to, Super Smash Bros. Didn't come out with like grand scale dream hack $1 million tournament, dreams. It's just a fun party game, people getting together to play and have fun, couch co-op style thing. But like their community has grassroots that into like actually having like decent sized tournament scene. And that's, I don't know, that's a really awesome comparison. I appreciate that. Dan, did you have anything to add to the esports conversation? You've been hogging the stage, man, hogging the mic quite a lot today, but I wouldn't mind giving you a little extra time if you got anything.
Now that you mention it, no, actually, no, I don't think I have anything. I think you said pretty much anything I would have said. I feel like
we played in a tournament together, didn't we? Dan?
We actually did. I think you mentioned the rule set, actually, the really complicated one.
Yeah.
We actually played it.
Yeah, can you share about that tournament? Because I think I heard you talk about that. You did it on stream, correct?
Oh, 100%. And then I thought it makes sense to have these tournaments, and if they really wanted to back it, they could. But is that what they actually want from their game? Do they actually want to have dozens upon dozens, like hundreds of people trying to compete to win tournaments. Like,
Yo, can you
I mean,
can you walk us through like what this, because you played in the tournament, so which actually makes you an esports star now that I didn't know about.
true.
But I wasn't able to watch because I was live. But can you like walk me through like what the tournament was like what it felt like, what your thoughts on
Hidden
it?
talents, but it was an interesting way to showcase some skills. I mean, they had an interesting rule set. I mean, I could see why people would be so like, passionate about it. I actually think that this new MMR system might gear more towards actual like encouraging competitive play, because in theory, if you do end up getting up so high up there in the MMR, then I feel like your games would take a really long time, and you would go against other really good killers, other really good survivors. I feel like it might actually encourage more competitive play towards like each other.
Dude, Dan, like this is gonna sound insane, but that's actually really a smart thing. That's really like that really made me, what you just said now just made me think, dude. That's wild. Because think about it, like as of right now, a big complaint you have from the people that are tryhard players that are like competitive players is like, what is rank one doesn't mean anything. My teammates are idiots, right? Like you hear people complain about it all the time. Like I'm rank one, these guys are rank 20s. Like what is even happening right now? But if this MMR system really does like get people who are playing at that next level to all be playing together, then maybe there will be more competitive games. There will be more competitive players. And then because a clear competitive like scene will form, we know like if you play the game a lot, like I play the game a lot, I run into a lot of the same players because of where I play, where my rank is, and what time I play of the day. I'm running into a lot of like also low red, high purple players. And I feel like if more and more people are actually getting shoved into really good top rank, high rank matches, then perhaps a natural competitive scene will form out of that. That's something interesting to think about.
Are you a little bit concerned that if you are in that top, maybe 5% of players, that you will literally play the same killer 4 times in a row and literally play the same survivors 4 times in a row, and then a stale meta occurs? Like that's my greatest fear, I think, of the MMR system, is that that's going to happen. And like I don't mind sweating the game out in DBD, but I would rather not.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, dude. Like it's fine once in a while, but like game 3 or 4 in a row is when I switch to Survivor. Like
right,
it's too much.
Yeah.
So
I've got DBD comp practice for that, RunningMan. I don't
right. Yeah, you're doing that. You're doing that off stream when you're like actually like interested in putting that kind of an effort in. So when they first, during the 3rd anniversary stream, when they first mentioned individual killer rankings, I think was what was actually
I love
mentioned.
that idea, by the way. Really love that idea.
I will abstain from, I don't know. I always keep a very open mind and like want to see what it looks like
I don't
first.
like that idea. I'll say that much,
But my whole concern with that was the same thing you were just talking about, though, is like if there's individual killer rankings, if you're a red rank survivor, you're never gonna see a clown, man. Like you're never gonna see a trapper. You're gonna see a lot of the same killer over and over again. You're gonna run Freddy, Spirit, Billy, like, every game. Hag.
I can't relate because like I will play every killer at rank 1 all day long because I enjoy that variety. But I know from playing Survivor, you just play Freddy. And
because the average player, Dowsey, doesn't play the game like you, doesn't see the game like you do. And the average player isn't going to be able to perform at the top ranks with a killer like the Clown or the Doctor or, the Legion. Whereas, basically, if you've got a pulse and you can read, you can get rank 1 as Freddy. It's like that's like a thing, like, and so like what would happen if it was individual killer ranks is you'd just be playing the same 3-4 killers a lot, but which is also a big concern, I would think, of even with this MMR system, because then a lot of the people that are playing those top ranked games, depending on how they rank, how the MMR system actually works, like is it going to be killers that like Freddy is like a 2-pip machine, right? Like we all play him, like he's 2 pips for days. Because of his playstyle, he slows the game down. He does everything you need to do. He is the apex predator of the emblem system, right? Mm-hmm. And so, is that what's going to happen? Are the red rank survivors just going to the true talent or the top MMR survivors just going to play against Freddy every game? Is it going to be dead by Freddy? Like that's a concern. So, but we've actually worked our way from esports back to MMR.
It's very interconnected.
Yeah. which I guess makes it smart that we kept them together on this podcast. We're good at podcasts, you guys.
100%.
Give ourselves a pat on the back for being good at podcasts.
Hmm.
Okay, so Dan, you've been, all joking aside, you've been relatively quiet today, but I think this next topic is going to be one you're going to look forward to talking about because you and I talk about this on a daily basis. But let's talk about VPNs in Dead by Daylight and what VPNs are doing to the game in a dedicated server environment. Dan?
It's causing it for like, okay, so you get those.
Well, first. Okay, not everybody knows what a VPN is. I'm going to tell you that. Like, I actually found out what a VPN was relatively recently. So for those guests and those people at home who are like, hey, Dan, what's a VPN? And why does it matter? Can you tell people like what a VPN is, how it works? Can you give us the inner workings of it technologically and then move on to discussing what it's going to do to DVD?
So I won't give you incredibly thick detail, but it's it's called virtual private network, aka VPN. What it allows you to do, it allows you to instead, like, so I'm, NA, it allows me to change my region to like OCE or like Australia and let me play on their servers instead. And with right now, I believe with the current dedicated servers, I think they're overcompensating for lag. And when you use that VPN and you play on a different region, as killer, you're getting these really raunchy hits. Like right now, you're probably getting like a little bit of delay, right? Sometimes the hitboxes are just a bit off or a little more than that. When you use a VPN, it's crazy how much like lag compensation is there. Like it's giving them like an extra foot or two of range. They're just
so what you're telling me
hits.
is that this virtual private network tricks Dead by Daylight into thinking that me as a guy in Spanaway, Washington, is actually in London, England.
Correct.
And places me on a server with a bunch of people that are playing from London, England. And so I'm connecting now to this dedicated server. And when the survivors in the lobby, they're seeing their ping to their server in London is choice, bro. It's green. This is going to be a good-ass match, dude. Things are going to be great. They log into the game. I'm playing the Trapper. First chase, pallet goes down. I swing, and they're getting hit as they're 2 steps past the pallet. Because my connection to the server in London has a substantial difference in ping. Like that's a rough explanation, correct?
100%. It's
okay.
Insane.
And so the problem is you've got an entire community who's already like ready to pitchfork and torch behavior because the dedicated servers, like they're so upset about these dedicated servers. And then you've got people who are using these VPNs and they're playing on servers that were never designed for them to play on. Then the match quality is poor. Then the servers are being blamed for that. And that, like, to me is an issue. I play the game, again, like, Dowsey flexed for me. We play this game a lot, the two of us, the three of us. We all stream it. We all play off stream. Dowsey's playing competitive. Dan's playing, a number of games with me off stream. Like, we're practicing, we're talking, we do our podcast prep in Survival Friends. So we like are doing two things at once, right?
True.
I would say that Dan and I, with 98% accuracy, can identify a private profile / an overseas profile within the first 2 generators of the game. Would you say that's accurate, Dan?
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Like you can feel it. You can feel it.
Yeah, you can feel it. Like you'll take forever to get him off a hook, or you just throw down the pallet, and for whatever reason, it takes like 2 to 3 seconds for him to stun, or he just takes the hit and it still hits you even though he got stunned. It's so weird.
Yeah, it's nasty, and it's unfortunate because, again, behavior is taking a bulk of the pressure, taking a bulk of the people that are just flipping out about these dedicated servers. And I'm not saying the servers are perfect, but when you've got a killer who's playing out of region, it makes the server seem like the bad guy when really the issue is that killer is in like Chile, or they're in London, England, or they're in OCE. And they're connecting to a server that's in Portland, Oregon.
Right. I think there's something's really like misunderstood by the general Dead by Daylight community. Like, let's say you're playing versus a huntress. The huntress throws a hatchet on her client, and it takes 60 milliseconds for that hatchet toss to be communicated to the server, and then another 60 milliseconds for that hatchet toss to be communicated back to the survivor. And then on the killer's server, the client, the hatchet hits the survivor's hitbox, and their client says, "I hit them," and it gets communicated to the server, which then gets communicated to the survivor, which then communicates back to the server, which then communicates back to the killer, and it creates this latency of time and how long it takes for all this information to actually be communicated between essentially three parties, the killer, the server, and then the survivor. And so like a hatchet that doesn't necessarily look like it hit you on your survivor client, guarantee on the killer's client it looked perfect, because the killer's client, to them, they've aimed, and they've communicated to the server that they hit. So you can imagine, if a killer doesn't have 60 ms, they're playing from Australia to West Coast America, that's probably 200 ms roughly, maybe 250 to get that. So a full 2.5 seconds, is that milliseconds?
Right.
That they communicate to the survivor and the server to say, "I hit that survivor," and then the server goes, "Well, okay, I guess you did," and then they communicate to that survivor. That's how you get those really weird, janky looking hits. And that's the problem that VPNs have, is that the VPN is tricking the server into believing that the killer is in where they say they are. So let's say the killer is in Sydney, Australia, and they're communicating to the server via VPN that I'm in California, West Coast. So the server goes, "Oh, okay, that's a bit weird. We're going to give you lag comp." Because clearly you're in California, America,
Right. The
and
weather's
we're
beautiful
just
where
gonna
you're
give
at
you
right now, for sure.
bit of a weird connection, but we're gonna give you benefit of the doubt here. But in reality, that killer is so far away, and that latency that they have to the server is causing the server to then create these weird looking hits on the survivor clients. And like Dan mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, being in Europe, we don't really have that issue, because if anyone wants to connect, there's like so many different random servers around Europe and Northern Africa as well for anyone to connect to. But every now and again, I'll like get someone who is in South Africa connecting to my London server, because it's just the closest server that they had. And if I'm playing Huntress against them, they cannot stand it. It is effectively the same as them. Your guys playing versus a VPN killer is this poor guy in South Africa who gets connected to the London server to play versus my Huntress.
Oof.
It's a bit of an issue. But we don't have, Chinese players or Korean players or Japanese players or Australian players who aren't content with their server or their player base connecting to North America, to with their VPNs, or even Europeans connecting to North America for VPN reasons. Um, and if Dan's correct that there's this lag comp like issue with the game, then it kind of creates a really awkward position for behavior. Do they continue giving lag comp to innocent players who need it so that their gaming experience is good, or do they have to remove it because people are exploiting the system?
Yeah, and that honestly, like, that's the tough question you have to ask. And I'm almost like, and again, I'm not a Survivor main, and I don't make my day-to-day, living playing Survivor primarily. But I know that, like, if I did, like, this is a huge problem for me, and I experience so much of it when I'm playing at night. And in the reality, I mean, is this gonna sound bad when I say the like high-speed internet is pretty widely available and pretty widely affordable? Like, I mean, lag comp, like, I don't know. I guess I'm ignorant to, like, is lag comp necessary to keep the honorable player base happy to the point that it's worth like allowing these VPN scourges to like continue to take advantage of an ideal situation for them? Thoughts, Dan?
I say honestly, I'm gonna have to say they'd remove it. I feel like I don't know. I feel like that'd be the better thing. It depends too, right? Like it's getting pretty bad, but it depends how many people start abusing it. I guess if it keeps getting worse and worse, they'll have to do something about it, right? Like if more and more people decide, yo, I'm just gonna do this for easy 4Ks and easy games. Like what if the
Yeah.
MMR system comes out and people really want their MMR really high? So instead they'll just change their regions, play killer, they'll get so high easily.
Dowsey, like you're pretty on top of this. Like, do you know? I guess would be my question. Like, was there lag comp for the old peer-to-peer system, or is that like something that's unique to dedicated servers?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm speculating a little bit here, Doug, about lag comp, because it's the only thing that really makes sense to me, is that the server would would provide lag comp because like we've seen clips on Twitter of a survivor vaulting a pallet and then literally 3 seconds later getting hit. They've already ran a good 15 meters away from that pallet, but they're getting hit. And I
Right.
can imagine that on the killer's client, that looked legit because of the latency that that killer who's I assuming VPNing onto that server, that hit will look as normal as any hit that any killer has ever done. But the server is then almost lag comping, I have to assume, the hit and then pulling the survivor back, basically going, nah, killer's got priority here, their client's more reliable. Because on the peer-to-peer connection, the killer was the host. So the killer
Right,
had
right, right,
0
right.
MS and you connected to the killer's client. So whatever the killer's client said goes. And there were definitely times where I was unfortunate enough to connect to a uh, East Russian killer, which is quite far away from the UK, or even a West Coast killer, or even in the very unfortunate circumstances, a South Korean killer, because there was a period in 2019 where the matchmaking was so random that you could get connected with Japanese players whilst playing in the UK. And they were playing with 400 MS, and their games are always bad, but for whatever reason, they stuck with it, even though they saw that big red flag of a ping in the lobby. They decided to play the game. And so, like, I've experienced that firsthand on a peer-to-peer connection, but in a peer-to-peer connection, the killer's the host. So it's whatever. You can't do anything about it. On servers, there shouldn't be that like killer priority that almost feels like it's trying to keep the game like it was on peer to peer, by giving the killer what it feels like lag comp, to make it so that if their hit connects on their server on their local client, then it tells everyone else's client that that's just the way it's going to be.
Okay, so I guess the big takeaway is that you're speculating. We're not certain that lag comp is the issue, but I think that we can all agree that like VPN is kind of it's not good for the game for you to use a VPN and play. I mean, essentially, like you're essentially exploiting. Like the developers have region locked the game for a reason. They have their reasons. Whether you agree with them, whether you think they're legitimate, the game is region locked for a reason. If you're using a VPN, you're basically cheating the system to circumvent the region lock. And I mean, I guess like I would hope that behavior would do whatever was in their power to make that not be as much of a thing. Because like I said, like this will be the last thing I'll say on the topic and we'll move on. But with 98% accuracy, I can predict if we're going to have a private profile or a profile that shows that they're outside of the continental US in a match. Like it's just so obvious. You can feel it. If you play this game 60, 80 hours a week, you can feel it.
It's really funny that we decided to talk about this, Doug, because today's sponsor of the video is NordVPN, where you can,
Oh my god!
Now that you mention it,
use code Dowsey. Use code Dowsey, dude. Like, oh my god, that's funny, dude. All right, so we got a few fluff topics, but we're already coming up on time. Like we're getting close to an hour, and I don't want to make this too long. So I think maybe we just roll into questions.
Yeah, I think so.
And I think that the good news is that the questions that we're going to ask are mostly for Dowsey because people found out that a smart person was going to be on the podcast. So they're like, oh, we want to ask good questions. So, all right, first question for Dowsey. This is from Denby. And Denby says, hi, Dowsey.
Hi, Denby.
Oh, thank you. That was very impolite of you to wait so long to say hello.
Sorry, I was pulling up the script.
The processing, process. Yeah. What do you think about the map sizes? What do you think about the concept of getting smaller maps in the game in general?
Yeah, I mean, so we've just had the Ruin rework, because Behavior are claiming publicly that they can't really understand what a typical game speed looks like currently when so many people are using Hexruin to essentially prolong the game, and it creates these inconsistent results. So hopefully over the next patch cycle, Behavior gets some better, more concrete statistics of how fast a game goes. And from that, they might be able to go, well, a game on Cold Tower, for example, is pretty much where we want it to be. But a game on Mother's Dwelling, which is currently the largest map in the game, speeds by because the majority of the killer roster doesn't really have the mobility to contest the generators. So I think that's something that if behavior wants to to try and extend game times, then a really good way of doing that is not to actually slow down the gen progress, but to make it easier for the killers to contest the generators. And you do that by making the map sizes smaller. I mean, Doug and Dan here will remember good old Pale Rose and how large of a map that was.
Oh, I miss it so much. You know what I miss? I miss spawning in on Pale Rose and heading for the furthest gen, and it finishes before you get there. Like you literally could not make it there on foot as the trapper before the first gen finished.
For those who didn't experience Pale Rose, that map was I think Mother's Dwelling is like 180 square tile meters or whatever the measurement system is in Dead by Daylight. 180, that's the largest, and Pale Rose was something like 270 in comparison. So,
but hey, there was some hella good ruin spawns on that map though, yeah? Right?
I have nightmares still about that map.
Yeah, it's awful, yeah. And I mean again, like you mentioned Mother's Dwelling, and Purgation feels really big too. I used to have a link that showed like the map sizes and the largest and smallest maps, and like it's like you don't even need to really look at the list like to know. You can feel how tough it is to protect gens based on the map size. And so I'm not one of those guys that's out here saying like every map should be like Shelter Woods or the Clown map, you know, the smaller.
Shelter Woods is second largest map there, RunningMan. Do you really think it's that small?
Is it seriously second largest?
Yeah, second largest.
Is it just because it's so open that it feels so small, or like what? It feels tiny, dude.
So Mother's Dwelling has a lot of trees that block line of sight, right? Rodham Fields has corn. And Shelter Woods is kind of a really open map. It obviously has trees and jungle gyms, but Shelter Woods is the same size as Rodham Fields, which is just slightly smaller than Mother's Dwelling.
Oh, Dan, I kind of feel like Dowsey just like ripped me pretty hard right there in front of everybody.
Oh, I know, right?
But like, I would agree with you.
If you could just stop talking for a second.
No, but I agree with you.
Dan and I need to sidebar for a second, okay? No.
Shelter Woods feels like a much easier map to control, doesn't it?
Right, it does. Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Which I guess that really like does that prove the point that maybe smaller maps aren't necessarily the issue? Is more it's just the map design as a whole. Maybe like if you're gonna keep there being so many obstacles or so many like line of sight blockers, maybe make the map a little smaller. And if you're gonna have it be a bigger map, maybe not have so much. Like, does Purgation feel like it just has like stuff everywhere to you? Like,
yeah, it does. It does. And Purgation is in the top 3 largest maps, up there with Disturbed Ward. And I feel like Purgation feels like a worse map to play than Disturbed Ward, because whilst Disturbed Ward has that middle god building where it just has every loop imaginable, everything else is kind of scattered and dead zoney.
But that building makes me want to uninstall the game, Dowsey. Is the thing the building makes me want to uninstall the game. Back when I used to be really tryhard, I used to get so mad that people would run it. But now I get it. Like, that building is just so safe. Like, how can you not run it? Like, if your goal is to stay alive.
And so like that's the thing. Do you adjust buildings then? Like I said that the map I hate the most is Mount Ormond because it has sound issues, it has scratch mark issues, it has god loops. For you, Doug, it's Ironworks of Misery because of that god building. So like you could adjust these maps by just changing those main loops and the safety of them to make the game feel a little bit more balanced, I'm sure. So like map size isn't the be all end all answer, but for some maps it is.
Right. I guess that's cool. That's kind of a good, like, a real intelligent, mature way to look at it. Like, yeah, smaller maps is great, cool, but like I made a comment about, and you know, we've established that Shelter Woods feels like an easy to control map while being one of the largest maps. I would never, as a casual, as a memer, as a fun game player, right? I never would have guessed that Shelter Woods was top 5. You said top 3 or top 5?
Yeah,
size-wise.
Second largest. Yeah,
that's insane. Like, I would never would have guessed that. I never would have guessed that.
It's empty though. There's like nothing there. It's just a bunch of birds, dude, in the shack.
A bunch of birds.
Basically, Shelter Woods and Rodham Fields is the exact same map, but Rodham Fields has.
They're very different though.
But they're literally like, if you actually look at layout, other than the shack being dead center for Rodham Fields, and it being slightly off to the side on Shelter Woods, they are quite literally the same map as far as loops are concerned.
That's wild, dude.
and it's just full of corn, which makes Rotten Fields the safest survivor map as far as behavior statistics are concerned.
That's wild too. It's so weird the way that works too. Like, we get these, like, just by playing, you get. It's why you have to be careful about making your determinations about the game based on your sole experiences alone. Rotten Fields doesn't feel that bad to me. Like, I don't get Rotten Fields and go like, ugh. Like, I don't. But if I get Ironworks, or I get Crotus, the original Crotus, or I get, is somebody laughing? Is something funny?
Yeah, I'm laughing.
Could you care to expand on that, bud?
God, the Iron Dude. I just want to, like, stream snipe you as a hidden, like, just a hidden person, and just play Ironworks on you. I feel.
I would literally be so sad, dude. Like, that map just makes me sad. Like,
no matter what loop we be at, I just run over there.
Just go straight to that window, dude. Like, I don't DC. You guys know, if you watch the channel, if you watch the stream, you know I DC like maybe twice a year. And I feel like 85% of my DCs were on Ironworks because they're just like, I can't handle it anymore. You cockroaches, get away from that window.
To the wall. I have to go fast to the wall.
But anyways, yeah. So it's just funny, like, and I illustrated this, and this will be a topic for another podcast. But it's very funny the tricks our minds play on us because of our personal experiences. And if I gun to my head, I would have said that Shelter Woods is one of the 3 smallest maps in the game. I just found out that it's the second biggest. So that kind of stuff just blows your mind because you have an experience, you have a series of experiences, and you just get yourself into this, like, mindset. And I think that happens a lot to people on both sides. But next question.
Go ahead. Most surprising map that I think is what's your thoughts of Rancid Abattoir as a map, Doug and Dan?
It has a very fancy name.
It does, but like size, loops, safety, that kind of stuff.
Dan, you go ahead.
Am I going ahead on it?
Yeah. If you're playing Survivor on Rancid Abattoir, like, how do you feel your odds are?
I mean, I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah. Dan, like, do you think you're gonna escape every time? Do you think you're gonna get caught?
Abattoir is
it's a hard answer to answer because, like, I don't try to escape in general. And I feel like most of the time, if I was trying to escape, there's very few maps that I have a problem with.
Abattoir is the one that spawns the random, like, impossible window, right?
Yeah. The really long indoor, like, stable window.
Yeah. So Abattoir, like, again, I feel like Abattoir for me comes down to whether that window spawns or not, whether I feel like I have a good chance to win or not.
Abattoir is like the 4th smallest map in the game, and that map for me always feels like it's a challenge because the safety of the loops is really strong. And it always shocks me because, like, if I was to rate Rancid Abattoir as like a difficult killer map or an easy killer map, I'd probably put it closer to the difficulty level, but it's 4th smallest map. So as far as killer pressure is concerned, you should actually be able to apply it.
That's so wild. Yeah, I never would have guessed that. That's like I said, though, like, your individual experiences, like, they just make you feel things. Like, in that window being so safe, and when people realize how to use it, I mean, I feel like that map can be, like, impossible depending on who's running it and how it spawns.
If it faces center map, you're almost destroyed.
Exactly.
If it faces, to the wall, then it's far easier to control. Yeah.
No. All right. So next question. It says, question for Dowsey. What are your thoughts on the proper grilled cheese sandwich? Now, this is if you didn't know, this is a channel meme between myself and Dan. Dan is convinced that if you toast 2 pieces of bread in a toaster and then put cheese in between it, that counts as a grilled cheese sandwich.
If you side with me, I'll love you forever, I feel like.
I saw this tweet. I remember Dan tweeting this, and I responded back, live your best life, Dan.
There you go.
You did.
There you go. So Dowsey's a humanitarian about the subject.
I was like, you live your best life, Dan. I mean, I don't really partake. I have an innate phobia of grilled cheese sandwiches because as a stupid 8-year-old kid, whilst making a grilled cheese sandwich, I decided to pull the grill out with my hand, and I still have a scar on my pinky from when I did that.
I just realized I laughed at that before I realized that the story was probably going to be tragic. Like, I started laughing, and then I started, like, it's late, and the numbers started connecting my brain. I'm like, wait, this is going to be a tragic story. And you just started laughing.
Like an innate phobia as a kid, and RunningMan's like, yeah. But yeah, no, I think if you put cheese on a piece of bread and you melt the cheese and the bread's toasted and then you eat it and it is ingested, then I don't really care what you call it.
Okay.
Like
So you're
I don't
saying
think
it
I'm,
would be a grilled cheese for the record.
if Dan
For
made
the
me a
record.
sandwich like that, I guess it depends. I'll need to look. Like I've not tested it. I'm an analytical guy. I'll need to look and see if you toast 2 pieces of bread and put cheese in the middle, does it taste the same as if you grill cheese on 2
I respect
pieces
that
of
about you. I respect that you're not just going to answer this thing from the hip.
I feel like it's a
And
hard maybe. I feel like it's leaning in my favor, I think.
I don't think he said no, Dan, which is probably better than you get most often when you
I thought it
propose
said
things.
almost
So.
yes, I feel like, dude. Oh, winning.
All right. Well, I will tell you that, and this is the last we'll talk about grilled cheese, but I have recently changed my opinion, and I say, yes, Dan, you are allowed to call that a grilled cheese, and I won't even argue with you. So, yes, you've won. And then she said, I'm kidding. Please don't start a fight. The question is actually for all of you. What do you consider your win condition? I know for some people it's getting out alive at all costs, whether it's point-based, whether it's 4 kills. What do you consider your win condition, Dan?
My win condition is getting in a good chase with the killer. If I can get to a 2 to 3 gen chase, I'm like, yeah, that's a 1 game. Because, like, I don't know, doing gens is the objective, but like, there's this weird part of me that just I don't like doing gens. Like, I just don't.
Yeah, it's super abnormal. Everybody in the community loves holding NM1. You're totally unique in the fact that you don't want to do generators. That's weird.
Weird. I know, dude. I'm different, huh? Question mark.
Yeah, definitely. So you're saying a good long chase is your win condition.
Good long chase, dude. Just done. I had a good game. Or, if I get face cams, I guess as well. I mean, also a good game because it's also they're spending time to do that with me. I guess having that special little moment.
It's like when it's like when you call
relationship.
Yeah, it's like when you call your grandma. Like you took that time out of your day to spend with grandma. What a lovely boy.
Grandma Hag.
Grandma Hag indeed. Okay, so now killer. What is your killer win condition, Dan?
My kill, honestly, I want to say it's not 4K because I don't want to be that guy, but I definitely do enjoy 4Ks. I try not to, but at 3K is good enough for me. I'll say.
So you don't want to be that guy, but you ultimately are that guy, and it's a 4K.
Yeah,
just say it. Just say it, dude. That's fine.
3K is okay, guys. 4K, I nailed it. I killed it. 3K, that's pretty good. 2K, well, I went even. 1K, I just, in my mind, entity displeased.
So I will say that I'm very basic and I've always been this way. And I don't know if it's just the way my brain is wired, but the pip system to me is the win. Like a win is a pip, a safety pip is like a draw, and a D pip is a loss. And if I die and I pip, I won. And if I escape and I D pip, I lost as a survivor, and vice versa. If I 3K and I D pip, it feels like a loss to me. If I 4K and I D pip, it feels like a loss to me. If I 1K or 2K and I pip, I feel like a win. Like it's just like there's something psychological about brutal killer, ruthless killer, merciless killer, and entity displeased. Like something in my brain tells me that was your win or your loss. Like I don't know. It's just I guess I'm weird like that. And so again, like it used to be a lot easier for me to win, and I miss that. But and I've gotten over it to a certain extent as I've been streaming. I stream a lot of hours and I play a lot of games. Like I get a lot of safety pips and a lot of D pips, and I don't like that doesn't bother me as much anymore. But it still will always feel like I didn't really win, if that makes sense. So, Dowsey, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would be with you there, Doug, on the pip system. If it wasn't for the fact that if I play Plague to a really good level, I can still very easily 4K and entity displeased, just due to her kit and the emblem system. So I can't like get behind the emblem system as it stands. As a killer, I basically make it my objective to stop the survivors from escaping by the exit gates by powering the generators. So that's quite long-winded, but it's essentially my way of saying I would love to 4K you, but I'm not going to slug you for hatch. I'm not going to slug the last 2 guys so that I can secure that 4K. I'm going to kill that 3rd guy. If you get hatch and you escape, then well done. If I close the hatch and then you get out of that exit gate, then well done. As long as I've stopped you from opening the exit gates via powering the 5th generator, then I feel like I've won as a killer.
Very respectable. Very respectable.
And for Survivor, I literally make it up each game. So if I want to play Dwight, it's how many head-ons can I get? If I want to run a flashlight, it's how many flashlight saves can I get. If I'm running a Gen Rush build, it's how many great skill checks I can hit. No, not really, but like
You monster.
yeah, no. Like I literally just make it up. I play Survivor. If I want to sweat a Survivor game, then it'll be escaping. But more often than not, when I play Survivor, I run wacky builds like with Breakout and Medal of Man. So my win condition is getting Medal of Man. You know what I mean?
Wacky builds. Whoa, what's he doing? What is that perk? Whoa.
Yeah, so
That's awesome, dude.
My Survivor win condition is very up for debate. It's game to game based.
Right, which is kind of inherent in the fact that you take killer more seriously because it's like your primary role, I would guess. Because that's how I feel about it too. Like, I could not possibly care about getting tunneled out and losing a Survivor, like, because I'm a killer player. So like, I can get frustrated about killer, but I have a very hard time being frustrated at Survivor. Unless I'm like frustrated about something else. Like, yeah, I'm the same way. Like, I mean, I look at the pip system, and for me, the way I play the game, because I'm a gen jockey that, you know, also likes to make borrowed time saves, I pip pretty regularly as Survivor. My playstyle really does like encourage pipping, which is why I'm the Running Dan Grand Slam pipping champion. If you guys were unaware. And that's just playstyle based. It has nothing to do with me being, you know, more talented than Dan. Don't think that I'm saying that.
Asterisk.
If you can't say the word asterisk, I don't care. I mean, it's fine.
Asterisk.
I'm just saying, if you can't say the word asterisk, I don't know if it's a burn.
I just did. Asterisk.
All right. So that's that. Moving on, the last question. Chewy the First asks, would you guys like to see the DC timer implemented on the live servers? Dowsey, let's let you take this one first.
Would you care to explain to me what the DC timer is?
Basically, it was the penalty for DCing. They remember they did a test run of the DC penalty. Right. Yeah, did I not?
It's 6 a.m. and I read that as DS, and I'm like, isn't
there
a DS timer in the game? No.
What are your thoughts on DC? Yeah, I don't feel like talking about DS ever again, but it might end up coming up again in the future. But for right now, no, the DC timer. What are your thoughts on the DC timer?
I think that I hate to see games ruined for survivors because one player decided to DC at the start of the game. But equally, when they did have the DC timer implemented, that player, instead of DCing, just, you know, tried to unhook themselves through time and die on their first hook. So it's doesn't really feel like it's a very effective way of preventing survivor games being ruined, which is what the ultimate goal is, you know, prevent DCing so survivor games are taken a little bit more seriously, and, you know, the 3 people who are left to clean up the mess of the one guy who wants to quit don't have to do so. So yeah, I mean, I think DC timers are fine. If someone's going to rage quit, punish them. But now are you having to punish people for dying on their first hook as well? Like, yeah, it gets a bit messy. I think I don't mind them introducing DC punishments, but I think we all know in this conversation that people just die on their first hook instead. It
just comes down to 6 and 1, half dozen in the other, right? Like, okay, so I can't DC. I'll find a different way to get out of this game. Like, I'm gonna get out of this game if I want out of this game. And then outside of like slugging somebody down like an animal, you can't force them not to die, right?
Yeah, that was a bit rough. Like, so I think there's ways that you can prevent like the DC punishment from mattering. Like, I think it's literally in the first 2 minutes of a game, if someone DCs, then they're really ruining it for everyone. But outside of that, if someone DCs, chances are they didn't ruin the game for you. You've had a lot of opportunity to get gens done at that point. And so if a killer does decide that they're going to slug all 4 people and let them sit there for 4 minutes, then, you know, allow people to DC unpunished, because, you know, at that stage, the game isn't being implicated by a DC. So like, you can definitely have a cutoff point for DCs, punishments, you know, whether it be like 3.5 minutes or something, where after that point, the DC is less impactful than if someone just DCs immediately.
Yeah, so I used to roll my eyes at this, and now I've kind of been like converted to this frame of mind. But I really think that the devs would be better suited to look at the reason why people are DCing. Now, I know that there will always be that guy who takes a pallet hit he didn't like against the trapper with 5 gens up and DCs. Like, that's just going to happen once in a while. And I promise you, the dude that like rage DCs with 5 gens up against one of the weaker killers in the game was going to do it whether there was going to be a penalty or not. They're just throwing a tantrum at that point. Now, a 4-man DCing against their 15th ghost face of the night, or a 4-man DCing against Forever Freddy, that's a more like what's the word, like predictable DC scenario. And so I think that like rather than focusing on some superficial punishment for people leaving the game early, they should look at the reasons why people are DCing. And I would tell you that the number one guaranteed method to get multiple DCs in a match was to play Old Parabead Spirit. That was a guaranteed two DCs minimum, mostly 4 DCs. And so instead of implementing a DC penalty, they changed the mechanic that was like literally unfun and impossible to play against. I think that they should probably continue to shade more on that side rather than looking at ways to punish people for not wanting to stay in a game. Because let's be honest here, we've talked about this pretty much at length. The killer has a whole lot more tools to make survivors' lives miserable than survivors have to make the killers miserable. Like a survivor squad needs to be good at the game and highly organized in order to really beat up on a killer, right? But a killer is like a couple of add-ons and an offering away from making the game really miserable for somebody.
Yeah, that's always been my like almost code of honor when playing killer, was that if I wanted to, Ebony Mori, Ultra add-ons, Strong Killer, and I literally ruin 4 people's game every game for the rest of my DVD life. I have the most impact on the survivors than any one teammate could have impact on as far as fun is concerned. And obviously, I'm not saying that killer is the power role. I think in a solo queue like scenario, they are kind of, but I've played enough DBD comp and had my ass handed to me by by survivors that are fully coordinated to know that the survivor role is very strong.
Absolutely. In the right conditions, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But the times that actually is seen in the wild is
every game I play, Dowsey. Every game. Every game. It's survivors. It's not me. It's every game. No. Yeah, so
too many exploits out there. Perks being used, crush perks. Damn, dude.
Gross. Yeah, so basically where I'm at with it is like, look at the reasons why people are DCing. The fringe cases should never be what they balance the whole game around. I think some sort of more collective DC, like if you're DCing in like a certain percentage of your matches, then start punishing maybe, rather than just like your first DC is a minute, then 3 minutes and 5. Like, I don't know. I don't know if I like the idea of harshly punishing early DCs. And that's just kind of where I'm at. Dan, do you have any? I know you play a lot of Survivor, so this will be going for you.
I feel like I wouldn't want a DC penalty in place because, like you said, you can just try to unhook 3 times, die on first hook, and I think it promotes like scummy gameplay on the killer's end, or it doesn't promote it. But if a killer did want to ruin your day, he could leave you slugged on the ground for 5 minutes, and he could just bleed you out, and you wouldn't be able to DC, wouldn't be able to do anything about it, because you do get those occasional killers or rare killers that just want to ruin your day, that want to play Forever Freddy. They want to slug you down to the ground, and they want to wait until you bleed out. And I feel like it would give them a little more power than they need. If someone DCs in your game, I feel like you should either play it out and just DC too. I mean, I think it's fine. I honestly don't think we need a DC penalty right now.
Okay. Yeah, I'd say like the last thing I would say is that I feel like DCs minimally impact my ability to enjoy the game. Although if I was concerned with pipping, DCs do make it very difficult to pip in the red ranks for me in my playstyle.
As a killer and survivor, any DC makes me immediately not want to play the game.
Right.
Like, I'll DC too, honestly.
Like I sometimes I'll do that depending on how early it is. If a survivor DCs from my game, and depending on what mood I'm in, I will DC as well, because like it's just not worth me playing it at that stage. I'm going to play it to win it so that I can get out of it as quickly as possible, which is going to make the 3 remaining survivors annoyed because I didn't give them 20 chances to try and get all 5 gens done. So yeah,
I'm the same way. When I play killer, if somebody DCs early, I'm trying to end that game literally as quickly as possible, because it's no longer a game of DVD anymore. I'm just trying to get out. And like, if you think I'm going to stop at farm, like maybe if I wasn't creating content, I would want to do that. But even that, it's just boring. And like, I don't, especially if I wasn't creating content, like I have a limited amount of time to play. So that's not the video game.
Depending on how the survivors play it, I'll attempt to let them black pip. by giving them, max unhooks on each other and make sure they're safe so that they're getting full
Aw.
altruism.
See, you're way nicer than I am.
Nice,
man.
dude.
You're way nicer
like-
than I am. I'm just like,
but
get
like,
out of
I'm
my
li-
game.
That's literally all I'm going for. You're not
Blame it
gonna
on
get,
blame it on XXX69 Lord who DC'd with his first down against the Legion. Okay, it's not my fault. So.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, that's our questions. That's our subjects. We had some fluff subjects, but like I expected, we're up to an hour and a half now because this is a good conversation with good folks. I want to give this opportunity for Dowsey to plug himself a little bit. I think I've done a decent job plugging you, but I think you could do better. So go ahead and tell them a little bit about yourself, what you do, where they can find your content, where they can find you. Take it away. The floor is yours.
I appreciate that. So right now I'm streaming on Twitch, mostly Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sundays, around afternoon European time, at DowseyTV on Twitch, and we do educational killer gameplay. I attempt to play every killer once per stream, but if you guys want to request a killer because you want to see it, then we have ways that you can do that as well. Outside of my Twitch, also at youtube.com/DowseyTV is my Dead by Daylight channel, where I upload about 3 videos a week, and some of those are going to be really good gameplays where I had a really good educational commentary. Others going to be guides and tutorials, and others going to be almost monologue conversations like this one, where I just talk about a topic and break it down, and try and do that. And also we've started doing gameplay reviews, which is a lot of fun. So literally taking someone's gameplay who submitted it to me, breaking it down, and trying to find those little areas that you may have missed in your own killer gameplay that you can improve. So that's what I'm doing at the moment, and loving it.
Awesome. Yeah, like again, I cannot recommend Dowsey enough. He's been a mentor to me in content, been a mentor to me in gameplay. Like I said, if you're a beginner player, if you're an advanced player, if you watch Dowsey, I guarantee you're going to pick something up. You're going to learn something. You're going to think about something you didn't think about before. I will have links to Dowsey's Twitch as well as his YouTube in the description of the video. If you guys are interested in asking us a question, Into the Fog podcast at gmail.com is the email address you can reach myself and Dan. If you have a question for Dowsey and you want to send it to our email, I am in regular contact with the man. I can get his question to you. I can get that question answered for you. I guarantee you we will be asking Dowsey to come back. If you guys have listened to the entirety of this podcast, you realize that he's got a lot of good thoughts in that massive brain of his. And his voice is like butter. It's like actual butter on an Eggo waffle. And when the waffle gets like just soggy enough, but like it's still got a little crunch to it, like that would be how I would describe Dowsey's voice. Dan, would you like to comment on that? Or
I feel like his voice is kind of like cheese in a grilled cheese. I feel like.
Why? And we're back to the grilled cheese. So no, that was a podcast. I had a really good time. I enjoyed the conversation. Dowsey, thanks again for taking time out of your literal night/morning to be here. Your dedication.
It's highly worth it. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Absolutely. So again, we've been Running Man. We've been DanInaHurry. We've been DowseyTV. We've been talking about Dead by Daylight, and we will see you next week. Do you guys want to say goodbye?
Bye.
Bye.
Nailed it.